Welcome to lesson 2 of the computer programming 1. We'll be looking at introduction to Python, variables, and data type. So, we all know that Python is a high level interpreted programming language, right? So, it is known for its easy to read syntax, which makes it a great choice for beginners, right? So Python is very versatile. It's a very good language that you can actually use to do many things, like do many things such as design the web application, desktop application, or mobile application, and also use it for data analysis, machine learning, and also for robotics, right? So as it stands now, Python can actually be used for almost everything in computing, right? The language is simple, just like it's close to like pseudocode writing, right? It's very simple, and here we're going to be teaching you guys how to do this very simple. So what are the key features of Python? So the first thing is Python is very easy to learn and use, right? So Python has a simple syntax that is easy to understand and write, right? So it's interpreted, right? So we know that some language makes use of interpreter, some language makes use of compiler, but this Python here makes use of interpreter because Python code is executed line by line, right? So which makes it easier to test and debug, right? So it's dynamically typed, so you do not need to declare variables types explicitly, just like this. So when you are declaring variable in some language, you use this. So this is explicitly typed, where you say like int I equal to 3. So this is explicitly typed. So in Python, you do not need to do this. All you just need to do is I equal to 3. So he assumes that so I is assigned, right? It's assigned as 3, or you can say that this I is a variable that holds 3, right? So then it has a very large standard library. So Python comes with many built-in modules and libraries for various tasks. So when you get used to Python, right, as time goes on, I'll be teaching you guys some advanced stuff on how to build advanced AI applications using Python, right? Tell you how wonderful this language is and very easy to learn and very easy to build your models, right? So next thing we're going to look, although in the previous lessons or lesson one, we'll look at variables, right? But since here I'm going to be repeating variables more here in detail because we'll be looking at this, right? So what is a Python variable? Now, a variable is a container used to store data in Python. So you may think of it like a label attached to a memory, right? To a value in memory, allowing you to refer to that value by the label, right? So variable is a container which in Python we can have a variable called a, which is a container that is used to store data in Python, which we have four. So this is a is a container which stores four, right? So in Python you can think of it like a label attached to a value in memory, right? So this is what it means by variable. Now the next one to look at, right? We have understand what variable is. We need to understand the rules of how we can be able to declare variables in Python, right? So, but before we look at that, right, there are two things we need in this practical session. So, the first is the Visual Studio IDE. Now, the IDEs that we have, which IDE stands for the Integrated Development Environment. So we have so many IDEs, right? To write our code, we have so many IDEs. But the most popular one that we have here is Visual Studio. We have Visual Studio Code. We also have the PyCharm for Python, right? And we have so many other ones, right? But this is most popular, so we're going to be using this, right? So if you don't know how to download this, it's free. All you just need to do is to go to your browser here and say download Visual Studio Code, right? So it takes you to the stuff here, right? So you can see this, you can then click on this. So when you click on this, so you pick your operating system, you can see we have for Windows, we have for the Linux, and we have for Mac, right? So you can see that you download the one that you can download anyone here, but make sure that you know your operating system you're using so you can download anyone here. So but I already have it on my system here. Then the other thing you need Python, right? So Python is also free and open source. So you just need to do is to download Python. You can Python, you can see this is their website. So you just need to do is to go to their website here, and then you will see the latest version, which is 3.13.1. So you click on it, I already have it, right? So you just click on it and it downloads instantly for you, right? So you just click on the operating system that you need and it downloads it for you. So now what I will do now is I'll go to my local disk here, right? So let me start with creating a new folder for this tutorial, and I'll call it Computer Pro 1, right? So I create a new folder in my local disk. So what I just need to do here is to go to my Visual Studio. Okay, now this is my Visual Studio, right? So I'll click on File, then I'll click on Open Folder. It will take me to the Computer Pro 1 and then select folder here. So now this is an empty folder, right? So this is an empty folder. So this is where I will start my design, right? So here, this is new file. This is where you can create new file. This is where you can create new folder. So we're creating a new file, and I'll call this file. Let's call it app app py. You can call it any name, right? So this is apple py, which py is the extension of the Python script. So this is a script, right? So when you say apple py, the interpreter understands that the script, that this is a Python script where we want to write our source code here, right? So let's go back to our PowerPoint slide. Okay, now showing you guys the in Visual Studio Code, which our integrated development environment, then Python, which how to install Python in your system. So when you're installing, make sure you check all the parts, right? So that you will not have any issue. So now what are the rules of variables? So the rules for variable name is number one, variable name must start with a letter, right? The variable name must start with a letter. It's either you're starting with capital letter A to Z or small letter A to Z, or you can start with an underscore. Then number two, the rest of the variable name can include letters, numbers, or underscore, right? Then number three, variable names are case sensitive. Now in Python, variable names are case sensitive. So if you go to your Visual Studio Code, if I have a variable name called A, which stores 4, and I have a variable name like this, A, which stores 5, you can see these are different, right? So the case sensitive, so the interpreter says these variable names as different names, right? So these are case sensitive, right? So let's go back. Now, the last one is avoid using Python reserved words as variable names. So these are some of the Python reserved words, which is the if, else, for, while, right, and so on and so forth. So there are so many reserved words, but I'm going to be sending you guys some reserved words so you can be able to understand all the reserved words in Python. But these are the popular ones which we're using. So just avoid reserved words, right? Avoid using Python reserved words as which is the keywords as variable names, right? So now let's look at the we have understood what variables are, right? Then next thing we need to understand is the data type, right? You need to understand variables, you need to understand data type. So there's so many data types in Python. So Python supports various data types that can be used to store different kind of data. So some common data types are the first one is the numeric data type. So the numeric data type we have two, which are the integer and the float. So the integer represents whole number without decimal. Then the float represents real number or numbers with decimal points, right? So here, let's assume we have this variable, right? So this is an integer 4. So this 4 is stored in this variable called a, right? This variable called a, and this is we can put 5.5. So this is called the float. This is called another data type, right? Which is small letter. The lowercase a holds this 5.4, right? So that is what it means here, right? So now to run our first program in Python, right, we'll have a function called, there is a function, this is a comment, is a comment, we use an hashtag, right? So there is a function called a print. Now what this function does is the print enables us to output to output information to the user, right? To output results to the user. So when you say print, now within this parenthesis here, you can pass in an argument here. So for instance, if I say print, right? So passing argument, so print, so I'm passing argument, string argument, which is hello world, right? So if I'm to run this, I will go to my terminal, new terminal. So we can see here, all I just need to do to run this, I'll put the Py script, Python, or you put Py short, then app, the Py, then run hello world, right? So that is the first thing to do when running Python. So you can see this is a print, so this output is returning, it returns this result called hello world, which is a string, right? So now we have understood the numeric data type, which is the integer and the float, right? So the next thing to understand is the string data type, the string. So the string represents sequence of characters and are enclosed in single quote or double quote, which we did here. So this is a single quote, this is a string data type, this is a single quote. You can also represent it with a double quote like this. Okay, you can also represent it with a double quote like this. Alright, so if I print this also it will come out, right? So this is a string data type. Right, so you can see to bring out hello world for us. And then so let's go to the next data type. So the next data type is a boolean. So boolean values represent truth values, which are the true or the false, which are true or false, right? So we're going to be using this in our lectures. We're going to be seeing how this works, right? That's how we're doing when we're looking at our control flows. We're going to be looking at how this works. So the next data type we have is a list, right? A list. Now, a list is a collection of items ordered in a specific sequence enclosed in a single bracket. Now, we're going to be learning more on this list because most of our problems we'll be solving here will be involving lists and dictionaries. So we're going to be like, we'll not mainly focus on tuples, which tuples is similar to a list but is immutable, right? It means that you cannot modify it after creation. So tuples are enclosed with these parentheses, right? While the list is enclosed with a bracket, right? So we're going to be looking at list more, which I will explain this more in the next class, right? Because list is represented as this. Let's say we have a variable here called a, and this is the list, is an empty list, right? So list can contain any items of any data type. So let's assume that we have an item like this. So it shows that this list has three items, right? This list has three items, and these items are all integers. So list can also contain mix up of data types like this. I can have John, right? John. I can also have a float data type, which is 4.5. So this list can accept this. So if I'm to print this, right? So if I'm to print this, print, so I'm to print this A, print A. So all I just need to do is this. You can see what it does. It just return this for me, right? So list takes any data type. So it will contain combination of any data type. So this is a list. So a tuple is represented in parentheses like this, right? Well, we'll be working more on this, try to be making use of how we can be able to look at the list, right? So let's go back to our stuff here. So the next one we have here is the dictionary type. So a dictionary stores key value pairs, which we'll be working on more. We'll be looking at the dictionary and the list more in this lecture. So a dictionary stores key value pairs. So each key is associated with a name. Alright, so and you can access the values by referencing the keys. So dictionary are created using curly braces. We're going to explain this more on our on our next lessons, and we're also going to be explaining the set type, which set is an ordered collection of distinct elements. So it is created using curly braces like this, right? Or the set function, which we're going to be looking at in our next videos, right? So we have also have the non-type. So the non-type represents the absence of the value or a null value, right? The null type represents something like this. We have something like this, right? So we're not going to be using these more in our video, right? But we're going to be looking at how we can be able to use each and every one of that type, but note that we'll focus more on dictionary and list, right? But I'm going to be showing you guys how to do this. So one thing in any programming language, right? If you want to learn any programming language, there are key things you need to understand here. Now, the first thing you need to do is to learn how to define, then learn how to manipulate. When you get this, right, when you understand how to define and you understand how to manipulate, then you can actually start getting used to any programming language here, right? So thank you. We're done with the lesson 2, which is introduction to Python. We understood variables and we have also known the data types which we're going to be using again in this course, right? So in the next video, in lesson 3, we're going to be starting our practical fully and then understanding all these data types which we will use in our next lecture. So thank you and God bless you.